Welcome to Pensar Basketball Live. The Toronto Raptors get their superstar back for the first time after 224 games away from the team. Scottie Barnes had a mixed game. The Toronto Raptors had an abysmal game. And if you are overreacting because it's preseason and you're like, oh my God, I'm not watching a single game for the rest of the year. Well, you didn't watch the Toronto Raptors tonight. You watched the Toronto Raptors 905 plus Scottie Barnes and Jakob Poeltl, and it was brutal. It was one of the most brutal basketball games you've ever seen. It was chippy. There were a lot of fouls. There were a lot of air balls. Kyle Kuzma, Mr. NBA history is not complete without me. I'll never stop quoting that quote. 5 air balls, including an air ball from the free throw line. I can't believe it happened, but it happened. Okay, let's talk about this game. First of all, I'm not doom and gloom about this. I really don't care. When you look at the lineups that were on the court, you would very much understand the Raptors were at minimum playing 3-on-5 pretty much the entire game. And the Wizards had pretty much their entire team. And it's not a good team. I understand that, but it's full of NBA players. I want to differentiate something because I made a big fuss earlier on the panel for PC about Bronny James not being a top 1,000 player across the world. And there's a lot of players on the Toronto Raptors currently in uniform who would fit that bill as well. That I don't believe that if you lined up every hooper on earth, that they'd be one of the top 1,000 players. And a lot of those players play for your team right now. And most of those players are not going to make your opening night roster. A lot of the guys that you saw tonight, I think it was great. I mean, if your goal is understanding what you have in a Bruno Fernando, in a Jamias Ramsey, in a DJ Carton, in a Jonathan Mobo. If your goal is to understand who Chris Boucher is, I think you understand a lot more tonight. I think you understood in real game time reps what the limits of putting Grady Dick out there with 4 non-shooters is. I think you maybe understood how much Scottie Barnes might struggle to initiate without space, right? Because there was a lineup with Scottie Barnes, Ochai Agbaji, Davion Mitchell, Jamal Shead, and who was the 5th starter there? Jakob Poeltl. You're putting Scottie Barnes on the court with 4 non-shooters. You're going to find out real quick. Now, okay, there are some. We're going to take some call-ins today. This is a call-in show. Call-in link in the description. Please give this video a like on your way in. I understand a lot of people are very upset about this game. I was reading the reactions online. I was reading the chat throughout the game because this chat was open throughout the game, and a lot of people were very upset about this game. So let's talk about this game. The Toronto Raptors jumped out to a very early start. Scottie Barnes scored 6 points and had 1 assist in the first 68 seconds. And it was pretty all right. For a little bit, the Raptors were pretty competitive in this game before it all completely fell apart in the 4th quarter. Now, honestly, the team stats would tell you that the Raptors basically just didn't shoot the basketball well. That probably they're never going to shoot this poorly again. But who knows? This is the Toronto Raptors. They ended up shooting 21% from 3. The Wizards, on the other hand, shot 39.5% from 3. Not going to win a lot of games when you do that. The Raptors won the possession battle by 19. They out-rebounded them 45 to 42, but the offensive rebounding differential is 19-7. The Raptors put the Wizards on the line all night, especially in that first quarter where they picked up a crazy number of fouls, and Scottie Barnes picked up 3 fouls in the first 5 to 6 minutes and then came in again in the first quarter, didn't come in again in the 4th quarter. Basically, when Scottie was on the court, things were good until they weren't. Now, Scottie went for a couple of breakaway dunks in the 3rd quarter, where effectively, I would say, one of those dunks, he came down a little bit gingerly, and you could see him hobbling a little bit. That was kind of my hope that wouldn't happen in a game like this, because you could tell he was a little antsy and ready to go, and he was like really excited, and hey, I'm out there, and it just didn't work out, right? He missed a lot of jumpers, right? He hit that one long 2 over Alex Sarr. Then he had that cook dribble, and then it got poked away. There were a couple of nasty turnovers. He had 5 turnovers, 3 fouls, 16 points, 8 rebounds, 1 assist, 2 steals, 7 for 15 shooting, 0 for 5 from 3, 2 for 4 from the free throw line. Scottie Barnes did not have a great game. He did it in 20 minutes. Where would the Raptors have been tonight without their longest tenured Raptor, which is Chris Boucher. He had 22 points in 18 minutes off the bench, 7 for 10 from the field, 3 for 4 from three, 5 for 5 from the free throw line, really active on the offensive glass, crashed it hard, had 7 rebounds. I thought he was a mixed bag as well. I mean, the box score tells you he was freaking Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, but if you watch the game, you understand Chris Boucher is still very limited in terms of what he does. He has some real knucklehead plays. Those 3 turnovers, 2 of them were super unforced and really bad. Bruno Fernando, wow, that was a weird performance, right? Like, really just does not know where to be very often. Just a touch around the basket is very suspect. And the Raptors really struggled with him. 17 minutes, 6 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, 4 steals, and a block. The 4 steals, you love to see that, but really did not have a great game. Jonathan Mobo, I think this was weirdly competent game from him. I know he had 5 points, 6 rebounds, two assists, and you're not probably very excited about that, but the 2 steals, 2 assists, 1 block, overall in 19 minutes, 2 for 6. He missed that last second bunny, which he airballed. And look, the touch is just not there, but the feel for the game is really there with Jonathan Mobo. Etrick saying it's going to be a painful season. Jesus Christ, dude, it's not. Like, this is not the Toronto Raptors. Like, what you watched tonight was not the Raptors. The Raptors were without, let me just list this out. The Raptors were without RJ Barrett, Immanuel Quickley, Kelly Olynyk, Bruce Brown, and Jacoby Walter, which means one of the weakest teams in the league was missing 5 of their 9 best players. That's tough. Okay. Ochai Agbaji is not very good at basketball. Surprise. No one should be surprised by this. Davion Mitchell is not one of the 600 to 700 best basketball players in the world. I don't care what anyone says. He's not that good. Jamal Shead, which as much as I like him, and he had competent stretches tonight, he is not one of the 500 best basketball players in the world right now. You hope at some point he'll become one of the 200 best basketball players in the world, and that would be a great outcome because he'd become a great backup guard. But right now, he's just not there. He can't shoot. He's undersized, and he's going to give up a lot. But he had some really competent playmaking stretches. I was really impressed with another guy that I don't think is one of the top 500 players in the world, and that's DJ Carton. I thought he had some interesting stretches tonight and a couple of really good plays. Take a look at DJ Carton's contribution tonight. -8 in 18 minutes, but 4 points on 1 for 7. But the one basket he made looked nice. I don't know, man. Sometimes you look at these, you're like, Jamal Shead, 1 for 8. Is he trash now? He went 0 for 5 from 3. He's not a good 3-point shooter. He's not a good 3-point shooter. Jared Roden, who a lot of people are really excited about, he went 0 for 2. I mean, really, this was bad. You want a silver lining? In an absolute blowout loss, when Scottie Barnes was on the court, you were +2. Is that something? Can you hold on to that? Can you put that in your pipe and smoke it for tonight? It's not that bad, guys. Grady Dick, mixed bag game, right? Look, there's the thing with spacing and who you play with. Grady Dick as a 5th starter, lethal. Grady Dick as a 3rd starter, you're in a lot of trouble because he's not one of the 250 best basketball players in the world right now either. And when you see the difference between a guy who is like Jakob Poeltl or Scottie Barnes and a guy who isn't like Ochai Agbaji, Davion Mitchell, Grady Dick, it's really night and day because there are levels to this. There's serious levels to this. Let's talk about Uber Shamshay. Holy crap. 8 minutes, -10, 3 rebounds, 1 assist, 0 points, went 0 for 2 from the field. How many fouls do you have? 5 fouls. So he almost fouled out in 8 minutes. A+ for energy, though, right? Doesn't know what to do right now. Is what we've been talking about the entire summer. Wait till this kid figures it out because he's beating his guy down the floor and he doesn't know how to seal. His teammates not finding him. He's not positioning himself right. Sometimes he sprints past where he needs to be. Sometimes he doesn't know how to pace himself. He's just going all gas. He is 100 miles per hour right now, but you got to see the longer term vision here. You got to see this. Like, take a quick look at what the Wizards did because, again, there's some guys on this team that are pretty decent basketball players relative to the players they played against tonight. Okay. And kudos to the Wizards. Corey Kispert came off the bench and killed the Raptors. 20 points, right? Bub Carrington had a much better game the second time around, 12 points, right? He got going a little bit, right? Jonas Valanciunas comes off the bench for the first time. He started every single game for the Pelicans last year, but apparently he goes to the Wizards. Now he's coming off the bench. He had 12 points. He got to the line relentlessly. The Raptors didn't know what to do with him. When Jakob Poeltl was on the court, they had no real matchup for Jonas Valanciunas, and certainly Brandon Carlson was not it. Brandon Carlson is really bad. I want to be honest about that. There is no stretch at all, that I have seen from Brandon Carlson in college, in summer league, apart from maybe 3 plays, where I have thought to myself, you know what that guy looks like? That guy looks like an NBA player. He doesn't look like an NBA player to me. If he becomes one, hallelujah. But he's 25 years old. And honestly, at this point, I'm going to make pretty much a bold proclamation instead of trying to break down this game and every single minutia of this game. Let me be, let's take a bird's eye view of this. Hang on one second. Noble Venom saying, I may have been wrong about Alex Sarr. I really like his game. Keyshawn George and Bub look good too. Good draft for the Wizards. Alex Sarr has looked better than I would have expected. To those who followed my pre-draft coverage, I was super, super high on Nikola Topic, Yves Missi, Reed Shepherd, and Zachary Risache. Those were pretty much the 4 guys that I really pushed for a lot throughout the entire process. You also know that I was relatively high to others on Jonathan Mobo and guys like that. And you also know that I was very low on certain guys like Alex Sarr. And Alex Sarr has looked better than I thought he would. I think the shot looks a little bit better than I thought it would. So, yeah. I have a history of being very biased against second overall picks. I don't know what it is. I think I've just been burned. I think I just have like a bad taste in my mouth from Darko Milicic and Marvin Bagley and Hasheem Thabit. It's just like so often the number 2 pick ends up being bad. But I think I have a bias in my brain that I just don't know how to get out. And last year, my biggest screw up in terms of pre-draft coverage was Brandon Miller. I was very low on Brandon Miller, and now I'm very high on Brandon Miller. Number 2 pick hasn't looked great so far. Okay, generally speaking. And if you tell me 10 years from now that Alex Sarr ended up being the second best player in this draft, I'll say I'm shocked because I don't think he's going to be the second best player in this draft at all. But if he does become the second best player in this draft, yeah, great draft for the Wizards. I do like Keyshawn George a little bit more than I liked in the pre-draft. I liked Bub Carrington the entire way through, and nothing I've seen from him in preseason gives me any reason to doubt myself on that one. I like Bub Carrington a lot. Recruiter dude saying Mobo is very interesting. Good for you. You see the vision. Yes, he is very interesting. Look, it's very rare for a player at 22 to have his defensive instincts and his playmaking instincts. And if you're going to tell me, well, here's the thing. I think people have to really, really dial back rookies because we haven't had a lot of great rookies as Toronto Raptors in a really long time. Okay. We've had a lot of upperclassmen. We haven't had a lot of Ulrich Shamshays. We haven't had a lot of Grady Dicks, right? We had a DeMar DeRozan a while ago, but OG Anunoby wasn't really a primary creator, so his job was very simplified. Pascal Siakam spent considerable time in the G League. He was also older. Norman Powell was older. DeLon Wright was older. Jakob Poeltl was a backup and a very simplified center, and he didn't pop right away. Like there's a lot of, JV spent a year over in Europe before coming over. And even then, like, yeah, he was good, but he was a top 5 pick. So when you consider prospects like Jermaine O'Neal coming out of high school, right? You consider prospects like Kevin Garnett, even. I mean, KG was really good, but, early on he struggled. Dirk Nowitzki. Holy crap. Give me a W if you remember Dirk Nowitzki's rookie season. Do you remember Kobe Bryant's rookie season? Do you remember what these guys look like? Do you remember what Jermaine O'Neal looked like in his first summer league game? Holy crap, I do. I remember those games. Do you remember what Tracy McGrady looked like in his first season with the Raptors? And do you remember what he became 4 years later? I was looking at a blog post yesterday on the greatest offensive peaks of all time, and Tracy McGrady 2002, 2003 was one of the 25 greatest offensive peaks of all time, NBA history. Well, Tracy McGrady, 1997, 1998, was one of the worst basketball players you've probably ever seen in your life. And the flashes were there. And with every young player, what you got to do is you got to take flashes and you got to turn them into slightly more flashes, and then you got to take them to more flashes, and then hopefully you can turn that into a quarter, and then hopefully you can turn that into a game, and then maybe you could turn that into 10 games, and then maybe you can turn that into a season. But I'll tell you right now, those flashes are very important. Very important. I have seen flashes from DJ Carton. I have seen flashes from Jamal Shead. I have seen flashes from Jemias Ramsey. I have seen flashes from Uri Shamshay. I have not seen flashes from Brandon Carlson. I have seen flashes from Jonathan Mobo and Jameson Battle. I don't really understand Bruno Fernando's role in this team. I understand people think we need a center, but I'm not really sure he's the right center. Personally, I would cut him loose yesterday. I've seen flashes from Grady Dick. I heard somebody, shout outs to who was it? In the Thierry Fontaine saying, I don't think Grady's ever going to be a good 3-point shooter because of today, because he went 2 for 5. Well, first of all, that's 40%. That's not bad. If it is his reluctance to pull, where the hell were you last year, Thierry? Like, I'm not trying to call you out, but like this is crazy reactionary for a team, for a game against the Wizards in preseason. And Grady is going to be fine. As a 4th or 5th starter, he's going to be really fine. If you ask him to play make and be a primary initiator for your second unit, he's going to look god awful bad. There are limits to what you can do with certain players. If you asked Rui Hachimura to run an offense tomorrow, he's lost. If you ask Contavious Caldwell-Pope to run an offense, he'd be pretty lost too. And he's a pretty good player. If you ask Bruce Brown to run 35% usage for you for one game, he would suck. There are very few players in the NBA that can even manage 28% usage without completely collapsing in on themselves. There is a certain dynamicism and a certain amount of gravity as a scorer and a certain amount of know-how and a certain set of skills, not to sound like Liam Neeson and Taken, a specific set of skills. You have to have a specific set of skills if you're going to run an offense or be any leverage as a high volume, high usage player at all in the NBA. I don't care if you're facing the Wizards or if you're facing the Celtics or if you're facing Denver Nuggets. Obviously, it's going to get exposed more against better teams. But honestly, a team like the Wizards, they don't want to get blown out by this team. They don't. They look at the Raptors the way the Raptors look at the Wizards, which is this is a bad team. They're not scared. They're looking at this roster. It's completely depleted. They're looking at their home fans, the ones who actually showed up, the 85 people who showed up to that game, and a lot of whom were Raptor fans who made the trip, which is crazy and kind of sad when you think about what they were treated to watching. But you got to consider it from the, again, bird's eye view perspective. There are flashes in the pan. With Uri Shamshay, it is really just how he runs the court. He's beating his guy down the court all the time. It's his activity level defensively. You can tell he wants to learn. It's the fact that after a tough play, he's looking to his coaches for verification on what he should have done. This is good. This is all good. With Jonathan Mobo, you're like, why is he succeeding and why is he failing? He's succeeding because he is a really decent athlete. He's a really good athlete, actually. And he has a really good feel for the game and he has a really good understanding of angles. Why is he failing? Because his skills as a shooter and a scorer are not there. He picks up his dribble way too often, way too early. And he doesn't really have teammates who understand how to play off of him. Like that one play where he played the high-low and he got that ball and he dunked it, that's exactly what he's done in college, and that's what he could do in the NBA. If you want to put Jonathan Mobo in a position to succeed right now, play him as a small ball center and he'll be fine. But you're trying to play him as a wing in order to develop him, and he's going to struggle. Same thing with Grady Dick. If you want Grady Dick to be successful, park him above the break as a transition shooter and just find him early and often and give him the green light and tell him to launch as much as you want. But that's not how you're using him. You're going to use him as a screener. You're going to use him as a cutter. You're trying to use him as a pick and roll initiator. And yeah, those are new skill sets, and he's going to fail a lot before he's going to succeed. But all you need to see is success on 1 out of 5 plays for you to have hope that what you're doing is working towards 2 out of 5, 3 out of 5. You know, the same thing with Scottie. Like Scottie initiated a ton of basketball today for the Raptors. In fact, he was basically used as a jumbo-sized point guard for much of the first quarter and the third quarter, and the Raptors were really relatively successful. Then he picks up some turnovers, and they go away from it. And I got to tell you, Davion Mitchell ain't it. Remember how I said all those like, this guy is like a top 500 player, a top 1,000 player? There are parts of me that think that Davion Mitchell is not an NBA player. I really believe that in my heart of hearts. I don't think he's an NBA player. This is how I felt about Jalen McDaniels last year. Don't think he's an NBA player. So when he struggles, I'm not really surprised because I see like 50 guards. I don't want to say 50 guards. I see about 30 guards in Europe that I think can run a pick and roll more competently than he can, that have more shooting gravity than he can. I can think of about 50 guys that are not in the NBA that play the guard position, but have since retired or a little bit older or just out of the league for whatever reason or bumping around in the G League. They're probably a little bit more talented than him. If you want my honest opinion, I think DJ Carton is more talented than Davion Mitchell. Am I crazy for saying that? If you listen to any pro scout on Davion Mitchell at this point, this is his last year in the NBA if he doesn't make a massive jump. Last year. Brandon Carlson, last year. This is your one and only NBA season. This is going to be like Menke Batir. Y'all remember Menke Batir? Or am I the only one? There's a lot of guys. Nathan Jawai, Nate Archibald, although he was pretty good. Like, they're guys, man. They're fringe guys that crack a roster rotation on a really bad team very often. The end of this team is very bad. And you played all of them together. Holy shit. So really good to see what Scottie Barnes looks like with these guys. I'm gonna tell you something. People say Cade doesn't have spacing, and he's playing with guys like Asar Thompson and Beef Stew and Jalen Duren. Holy shit, I wish we had a Jalen Duren or an Asar Thompson on the bench tonight. That would have been great. That would have been fantastic. No, there's bad, there's like 50 feet, and then there's absolute dribble crap. Okay. And my big takeaway from this game is if the Raptors are going to invest in development, if they're going to invest in, youth, I want slightly better youth. I need an upgrade on youth. And I understand that you're probably going to say that can only happen through tanking for a draft pick. I don't think that's the only way. I think there's probably around 35 to 45 players, maybe puttering around at the end of the bench. There's a lot on the Celtics. There's quite a few on the Portland Trailblazers. There's a couple on the New Orleans Pelicans. There's a couple of young players that have a lot greater, higher upside than guys like Brandon Carlson. And I'm sorry, you just cannot waste a roster spot on someone like this. And if you're going to tell me that Brandon Carlson is going to turn into an NBA player in 2 years, I'll consider that very surprising because at 25 years old, he does not have the basketball IQ right now to play. He doesn't get it. And it's not just because he's a big, and it's not because the game needs to slow down for him. It's not just that. At 25 years old, you want to see toughness. You want to see, a refined shot. You want to see, basketball IQ. You want to see like some secondary playmaking. I've seen much more so far through summer league and 2 preseason games from Uber Shamshay, who is 7 years younger than him, than I have seen from Brandon Carlson. And again, if you're gonna develop a player who's raw, I'd rather you do a EuroLeague player like Gershon Yabusele, who currently plays for the Philadelphia 76ers. Take a guy like that, or even shit, go back and revisit a past project in Bruno Caboclo. I can go with either one of those. Anyways, long story short, the Raptors played a really mixed game. When it was going badly, it was going really badly. They couldn't buy a shot. They were turning the ball over. They weren't getting very good penetration. When they were getting penetration, they were missing wide open layups. We saw Bilal Coulibaly blown transition dunk, which turned into a Brennan Carlson bricked three where he probably could have gone all the way to the basket. There's just a lot of guys who don't really know how to play the game, and they certainly don't know how to play together. Am I discouraged about the overall hopes of the Raptors season based on this one preseason performance? No, because I'm not stupid. Immanual Quickley simply playing tonight probably would have edged you to a win. RJ Barrett simply playing tonight would have edged you towards a win. The Washington Wizards not playing defense the way they did tonight, like they competed harder on defense tonight. Like, I don't know if you saw it, but they really pressured the basketball. They really wanted to get this win. And frankly, they played actual NBA players, actual NBA minutes. I mean, gosh, who did they play here? Let me see. They got 27 minutes from Kyle Kuzma, 29 minutes from Bilal Coulibaly, 26 minutes from Corey Kispert, 22 minutes from Jonas Valanciunas. Yeah. And on the other hand, you got 20 minutes from Scotty, 20 minutes from Jakob. Yeah, that's just it. If you're going to play Davion Mitchell 27 minutes and DJ Carden 18 minutes and Jonathan Mobile 19 minutes and Chris Boucher 18 minutes and Bruno Fernando 17 minutes, I don't think you'd beat a EuroLeague team right now. You might not beat a G League team right now. It's bad. Okay. The end of this roster is really bad. Okay. Let's get to Retro Jasper. What's going on, man?
Hello. I figured out technical issues from last time. I'm here to talk about energy.
Okay.
Obviously it's a preseason game. A lot of guys out with injuries. Um, I really, I don't know if it's a Darko thing, but I think as a coach and maybe his staff, I think that it's their job to at least there's a couple moments in the game where obviously things slowed like way down. Um,
Okay.
I think that in terms of energy, I didn't like to see the fact that Darko and maybe some of his staff were able to change something, because I think that truly great coaches and good coaches, maybe this is just a learning curve that will come with Darko and this upcoming season. You know, they're able to bring their guys back to the main focus, and I didn't necessarily see that today. And I wanted to hear what you thought about that.
I'm not fully sure I understand what you're saying. So, what I understand is like when things were going poorly, you feel like Darko couldn't get his team back into the game.
Well, I'm questioning Darko's ability to, not necessarily to lead the team, but to, you know, if things start to get rough, will he be able to, whether this is further down the season or further with his time with the Raptors, if he's
Mhm.
going to be able to successfully be able to control, his guys and have them set on one goal? Because, whether that's through Scottie, who's, established leader at this point, Dark has made that very clear, or a guy like IQ or RJ, maybe it was because of his preseason game. Maybe it was because there was a lot of guys out. It's just the focus of energy into the rest of the team, I don't think was communicated well. And I'm questioning Darko's ability to be able to successfully get a team that is slowing down or struggling in the game back on track, which is, I think a lot of people can agree that's going to be a very important part of this team as we move on.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, like I'm not suggesting that Darko is Phil Jackson right now, but I think that his ability to, and again, this was when the Raptors were up 29-20, right? And I mean, overall, they ran the floor hard. They celebrated for each other. They tried to stay together on defense. It's not easy when you have such a lack of talent on the court. Like, what do you want him to do? You want him to ask Jonathan Mobo to break every bad habit he's ever had, for Brandon Carlson to suddenly get way better at basketball. I think I'm sort of understanding that like he doesn't have the ability to stop bad momentum from overrunning like a 5 point lead from turning into a 20 point lead. If I'm kind of understand, am I even
Yeah, 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 somewhat.
yeah, okay. So, overall, I think this goes back to last season. There were a lot of really ugly losses, like blowout losses. I think it was like a 30-point loss at home, and then it was followed up with another 30-point loss at home. And I think what's important is that the team stays together, that the team is continuing to have good, like, when I'll know this is failing is when I see guys at the end of the bench talking shit about him, right? Or him pulling over a player when they come out of the game and them rolling their eyes. That's
Yeah,
when I'll know that this is failing. Right now, you have to take those 30-point bumps. You have to take those blowout losses because sometimes it's actually a great thing to get your ass kicked
yeah,
and not just like beat by 3 or beat by 5, but like really in an embarrassing way get your ass kicked. Not only do you learn a lot about your team, you learn a lot about like they learn a lot about themselves, you learn a lot about them. It's a great learning experience. So you would see after a 25 to 30 point loss or a big, turnaround where you were up at half and then you had a second half collapse, you'll see who your leaders are the next day in the practice. You'll see who shows up early. You'll see who stays late. You'll see who's really talkative on the bus. You'll see who's trying to take charge, and you'll see who's checked out. And I think you get a lot of feedback. I think data is currency. Like understanding who you have on your team, what they are, who they are, what situations they're going to be good in, what situations they're going to be poor in is very important. And sometimes the only way to figure that out is to put them in loads of different situations. If you like, is anything I'm saying like landing with what?
No, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
Okay. So overall, I think he's a really good coach who has a lot of growing to do himself. But overall, I think the greatest litmus test is that his star player is listening to him, that he believes in him, that his players are growing and getting better, especially the important ones. Grady, Scottie,
Yeah,
RJ, Immanuel Quickley, Jakob Pertl even looks much better. In my opinion, I think Jakob Pertl, some of the breakaways that we saw today from him
the
were good.
passing.
The passing and, I saw Jakob Pertl initiating, a drive from the top of the key, and I was like, "Great, that's one way to solve some of these spacing issues." And I trust that, guys like Jonathan Mobo and, again, I have no idea if Ochai Agbaji and Davion
Yeah,
Mitchell are redeemable, at this point, but maybe guys like Jonathan Mobo and, especially Jacoby Walter, Ulrich Shamshay, like these guys could really turn into something with him. And I think the most important thing is that he's stable. He's not erratic. He's not overly reactionary. I don't see him like getting too down when things are going poorly. And I don't see him getting like I don't see team feel like you want to talk energy. Nick Nurse was a coach that I really looked at as having like terrible energy.
yeah, I
Like,
agree.
he was just always, like, upset and angry, and then you would see that, like, transferring over to his team, and there was just such a reactionary sort of thing, especially in his last year here. But even earlier than that, there were, like, a lot of reactionary moments where I'm like, "That's not very helpful, and your team is feeding off of that, and that's not good." Darko is very, like, much more stoic. You don't see him stomping up and down the sidelines. You don't see his team kinda checking out on him. You don't see them completely abandoning their game plan. And, I think Chris Boucher, for all of his good today, was a lot of bad too. I don't
Yeah, I
know.
agree.
Yeah. What'd you think of the game overall?
I mean, I obviously you talked about guys like Mugbo and all that. I think that there were like a lot of really great moments where you could see like the products of the offseason really bearing fruit.
Mhm.
Um, I Jamal Shed, he kind of struggled today. I thought he played, pretty well again because I really cared about energy this game. Like, he's just always full of energy, whether it's offense, defense, all that. I really like DJ Carton. He played a really great game. I think, compared to what we saw like the end of last season, he's just, he's gotten better. He's probably going to still continue to develop, especially, when you have guys like Jacoby and IQ come back,
Mhm.
supporting, um, his development. But it's just, I don't know. There were moments where I felt like I was watching like JV basketball. I
Right.
mean, obviously, like you look at the roster right now for like this game specifically, and it's like, what are you expecting? But I don't know. It just really
Okay.
threw me for a
So
loop.
here's a question for you. I'm just gonna go down the list of players that played today for the Raptors, and you tell me if you think they are top 250 players in the NBA. And
Okay.
I use the word 250 because I think that means you're a rotation player in the NBA.
All right, that's fair.
250. Okay. Scottie Barnes,
Yeah.
Jakob Pertl,
Yes.
Chris Boucher,
No.
Davion Mitchell,
No.
Ochai Agbaji,
No.
Grady Dick,
No.
Jamison Battle,
Hell no.
Bruno Fernando,
Nope.
Jonathan Mobo,
No.
Brandon Carlson,
Nope.
Ulrich Shamshay,
Nope.
Jamias Ramsey,
Nope.
Jared Roden,
Nope.
Jamal Shed,
Nope.
DJ Carton.
Nope.
Okay, so you played two guys who were rotation players. Now let's look at the Wizard side. Alex Sarr,
Yeah.
Keyshawn George,
I mean, I'd like to see more of what he could do, but right now, no.
okay, Kyle Kuzma,
Yeah.
Jordan Poole,
Yep.
Bilal Coulibaly,
Yep.
okay, Gil,
Maybe.
Tristan Vucevic,
Maybe.
Corey Kispert,
Yes.
Jonas Valanciunas.
Yep.
Okay, I think we have our answer. Do we not?
I mean, yeah.
You get my point, right?
Yeah. I get what you're saying.
Your third best player is probably getting a DMP CD for them. Okay, this
Yeah.
is so outmatched. It's hilarious. Now, when I ask you about Bruce Brown, you say yes. When I ask you
Yeah.
about Kelly Olynyk, you'd say yes. RJ Barrett, yes. Immanuel Quickley, yes. Jacoby Walter, probably not, but he's way closer than 80% of the guys who play for you tonight.
Yeah, I agree.
And honestly, in a game like this, Jacoby probably would have splashed 15 for you. So I'm just saying, like, people overreacting to this, and I'm not even gonna watch the other podcast because I know what they're gonna do. And I know their whole
Oh
fucking
yeah.
yeah, I know their whole fucking game plan. Like, I'm not even doing that because to me, this is like it's silly. It's silly to be so knee jerk and so crazy over one preseason game on the road where your star players coming back, and he looked fantastic and he looked awful. Like there's so many ups and downs with Scottie in this game, but honestly, man, like I think you get some proper, you get the players that he's supposed to play with around him and how big those gaps would be. Like he was getting swarmed, double,
Yeah.
triple teams,
In
and
the
some
paint.
big guys. And, he wasn't getting off of it quick enough. But then you ask yourself, what does getting off of it mean? It means throwing a grenade to a non-shooter in the fucking corner or throwing a cut to a throwing a pass to a guy who's not going to catch the basketball. Like you're asking Scottie Barnes to really be like you're playing against absolute garbage. And I think Kelly Olynyk would have made all the difference in the world. In a game like this, where he could have spearheaded the second unit, I think he would have made a ton of difference. I think the problem is your guards can't shoot. Like it's a fucking
Yeah,
huge
I
problem.
agree. It pissed
Like,
me off though.
like you take a guy like I'm gonna try to think, like let me think of a guy like Tyus Jones. Like, what a freaking breath of fresh air. A minimum contract guy like Tyus Jones, DeLon Wright, or even Gary Trent Jr. My girlfriend did not know that Gary Trent Jr. was off the team. She's like, where's Gary? And I'm like, he's off this team. She's like, damn, they could really use him tonight. I was like, yeah, because Gary Trent Jr. probably put 35 points up on the board tonight. And that's what you might need. But what I have been encouraged by overall is defensive effort. Like overall, like when they pressure the basketball, it does look good. They're fouling a lot right now, but that's what happens when you're not used to playing defense. Like you foul initially. Hopefully you clean some of that up, you dial back the aggression, but I'd rather have to dial back a little bit of aggression than ask the team to be more aggressive. So again, there's a lot of like kumbaya spirituality, type of talk here of like, take the big picture, take the bird's eye view, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But I mean it. Like it's not cap with me. Like I think this team is going to be perfectly fine. But if you take the top, if you take 4 out of the top 7 players off of any team, or 4 out of the top 8 players off any team, because really Kelly Olynyk is definitely one of your 7 best players, 100%. RJ Barrett is one of your 3 best players. Immanuel Quickley is one of your 2 best players. Like Bruce Brown's one of your 7 best players. Like, you know what I mean? Like you take 4 players that are the best players off of any team that's expected to finish with 30 wins, and you will get a performance just like this, guaranteed, even if it's against last year's Detroit Pistons. Like these are still NBA players. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any final thoughts?
No, that's it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot. Okay. If there are any more callers, I'm going to drop the link in the description here. This probably isn't going to be a very long live, but if you want one more caller, I'd love to talk. And yeah, look, I mean, overall, next up, Sunday night, Boston Celtics, Thanksgiving. All right. This is the big one. And you know what? If you want to take a more holistic view on this, getting your ass kicked by the Wizards is going to lead to a very interesting practice tomorrow and hopefully a very intense practice. And it's red alert time, right? You think about it from the Raptors perspective. Imagine you're in that locker room right now after a 20-point loss to 19-point loss to the Wizards, the lowly Wizards, a team that almost every single person unanimously believes is going to be a top 3 horrible team in the league, alongside actually top 2 horrible team. Like they and the Brooklyn Nets are really in a class of their own, and honestly, they're worse. So this is the worst team in basketball right now. The Detroit Pistons might catch up to them with some creative tanking. The Portland Trail Blazers might get there, but I have a feeling this team is going to be in a league of its own with, like, I don't know, 12 wins on the season. Okay. You just lost that team by double digits, and it was not close in the fourth quarter. Now, while you were still playing your starters, it was pretty close. It was still like a 2-3 point game. And if you put Scottie Barnes back in the fourth quarter with Jakob Poeltl, you probably win this game. But to what end? Who cares? It's a preseason game. It doesn't count for shit. It's on the road. You're not playing for Montreal crowd. You're not playing for the Toronto crowd. You're not playing for your people. You're playing for their people. And who the hell cares? But overall, it's probably a good thing to have that red alert from your players if you're Darko Rajakovic going into that game, right, against the Boston Celtics, because again, they're not going to play their starters heavy minutes. Jason Tatum will be lucky to crack 14 minutes, maybe. Nobody's trying to get injured in one of these meaningless games that don't count for anything. So they're just getting reps. They're not going to try very hard. If you come out early, they're going to stomp you in the second quarter. If you don't come out early, they're going to pull their starters and they're probably going to beat the crap out of you with their bench. So at that point, you know, a 50-point loss, a 45-point loss to the Celtics is not out of the question if you don't show up to play at all, right? Andrew saying, I saw Garrett and Jacoby were chatting the whole game. Oh, yeah. Look, I'm going to say this just like as somebody who wasn't super high on the Jacoby Walter pick. I talked to someone who would know a lot more than I. The Raptors are super high on Jacoby Walter. Like they see this guy potentially as a starter for them down the line. Okay. If not that, then a six man. Like they have way more faith in him than any of their other rookies. I know some people are really high on Jonathan Mobo, myself included. Ulrich Chamche, Jamal Shed. I feel like a lot of people haven't talked very much about Jacoby Walter, and he's almost like I saw somebody say the other day that that's the one pick they're not comfortable with. I heard somebody else say Jonathan Mobo is one pick. I think the Raptors hit on all four of these guys. I really do. I'm starting to believe it. Like I wasn't really sure about the Jacoby pick when they made it, but I think he's going to be fine. But you're just going to have some patience with it. And luckily, the Raptors have the 905. Did you watch the Raptors lose to the Wizards tonight? No, you watched pretty much the Raptors 905 lose. Okay, so overall, there were flashes. There were flashes of good rotations. There were flashes of good ball pressure. There were flashes of, sealing that gap and Scottie Barnes picking off a pass or, getting into that passing lane. But there were also mistakes. There was, for instance, a play where Scottie got way too focused on a help and let Corey Kispert get a clean three, and he was kicking himself right after, right? There were plays where they completely misread the screen. There was a play where Chris Boucher, a 6, 7 year veteran, had all the time in the world to set up a screen. Sorry, to set up to take a charge, and his foot was still in the line. When Darko Rakovic says he still treats Chris Boucher like his rookies, I think he means that. What would I do if I was on this team? Well, earlier today, I released a video that I thought Scottie Barnes had an outside shot at winning MVP this year. And I realized that after a game like this, when you get blown out by the Wizards, talking about 40 wins and 44 wins and stuff like that seems very, very, very pie in the sky. I read someone say today, when do you think the Raptors are going to make the playoffs next? And someone else responded, not for 5 years at least. I'll bet you anything that's not true. It's not this year, it's going to be the year after. Like it's within the next 2 years. This is not going to be a lengthy rebuild. This is not one of those, oh my God, it's the Orlando Magic or the Sacramento Kings stuck in mediocrity, missing the playoffs for 16 straight years. Not a chance. I'm telling you that as somebody who generally believes in not only what this coach is doing, but also the overall development philosophy of this team, but also some of the young players on this team, the youngest players on this team, guys like Ulrich Chamche and guys like Jacoby Walter, guys like Grady Dick, where I think they could be 2 years from now is really, really far away from what they are today. And it's really hard to see. Everyone can see. Not a lot of people have vision. You know what I mean? It's just how it is. I was watching a TikTok reel the other day, not TikTok reel, Instagram reel, where this woman was asked, how much money do you make this year? She's an entrepreneur. And she said, we're going to bank $20 million this year. And he's like, how old are you? She said, 43. And they said, when did you make your first million? She said, when I was 40. If this woman tried to tell someone when she was 39 and she had never made $1 million, that she'd be making $40 million or $20 million within 4 years, they would probably say that's crazy. We are very, very bad. Unless you specialized in it, unless you studied it, unless you work with data models, unless you understand math in a very advanced way, or you studied finance, I don't know. Most people are really bad at estimating growth. It's something that I've just learned throughout my life, throughout very many sectors, throughout film festivals, throughout finance through working at a hedge fund. Like I have just learned this my whole life, which is if you try to tell somebody that a $2 stock that hasn't moved in like 8 weeks is going to be an $85 stock, their brain just cannot process 4,000% growth. They just can't do it. Like it's just can't. But that's just how it works. Scottie Barnes was supposed to be a project. Now he's a franchise player. What the hell? That's 3 years. So again, do you remember what Pascal Siakam looked like in his first NBA game? Do you remember that? He did not know where to be. I don't think he understood the game. He was just like run up and down and try not to foul too much. He fouled like constantly. And then within 4 years, he was an NBA champion signing a max contract. Now, I'm not saying any of these guys are Pascal Siakam or Fred VanVleet. Please understand, Fred VanVleet came onto the Raptors as a fourth string point guard. He wasn't, he was a much better shooter than these guys, but he wasn't that far removed from a DJ Carton or a Jamal Shead. He's a hell of a lot better than Davion Mitchell, I'll tell you that, but he wasn't that far removed from those guys. If you tell me Jamal Shead ends up having a better career than Fred VanVleet, I'll say, cool, I believe that. It doesn't happen overnight. The problem right now, especially in a game like this, is you don't have your DeMar DeRozan and Jonas Valanciunas and Terrence Ross and Amir Johnson to shield those guys. You don't have a Serge Ibaka. You don't have, guys like that to kind of shield these guys from the scrutiny where, they can baby step it. No, these guys got to play all together all at once. And holy shit, it looks bad, right? You're asking Davion Mitchell to initiate a pick and roll with Jonathan Mobo as a screener in an NBA game in 2023, 2024. That is just a wild proposition. I don't think that would work in EuroLeague. It's just a really big gap, is what I'm trying to say. The gap between the 500th best player in the world, which is probably something close to what DJ Carton is, and the 220th best player in the world, which is something close to what Bruce Brown probably is so massive. It's like it's everything. It's how they pass. It's the accuracy of the pass. It's how well they score. It's the angles on the screens. It's their know-how. All those little hacks that they have defensively. Like a Jakob Poeltl, he's a real like top 120, 130 kind of guy in the NBA. He's like a legit player. Like he would play rotation minutes on any team. He's so good at basketball. Like he's so insanely good at basketball. Like he understands the game on a completely different level. There's physical, gifts that he enjoys between coordination and balance and strength. That's simply a guy like Ulrich Shamshay just does not have that understanding of where to be, right? So these things just have to be developed. It just doesn't come overnight. I'm trying to preach patience here because honestly, I don't want people to, panic themselves into completely giving up on this team because I really do see a lot of fruitful things that are going to happen for this team. There's going to be a lot of really bad losses. I'm sure of it. There's going to be a game against Denver or Minnesota where you're going to get smoked by 35. But then there's probably going to be a game where you're going to smoke Atlanta by 20 or maybe beat Milwaukee by 10 on the road. And you're going to be like, holy shit. And Scottie Barnes is going to average 30, have 30, 10, and 12 in that game. And you're going to think that there's a real vision for this. I'm going to judge this team by the 25 best games this year, not 25 wins. I don't care about wins and losses. I'm going to judge this team by the 25 best games they played this year. And everything else, I'm going to toss in the garbage, whatever it is. I don't care about makes and misses. I care that you take the right shots. I don't really care if you stop. I care if you get in position to make the stop. If you contest properly, you read it properly, you communicate the switch properly, and the guy still scores, hallelujah. Congratulations to that shooting variance. To me, I don't think this was a well-played game by the Raptors. It's not only that they were massively undermanned, not only were they massively outmatched in terms of talent, which is, what the little exercise I did with Retro Jasper talking about, NBA players and NBA quality players, etc. Scottie Barnes is definitely by far the best player who played in this game, but it's just one person playing against 5 people. It's not going to work. Okay. Hopefully you get a much better effort on Sunday. I was supposed to go to a dinner on Sunday. Some close friends are having a dinner. We still haven't made up our mind if we're going to do it. If we do that, then the post-game live is just going to be a little bit late. But I want you to know, yes, Raptors Republic, I believe, is not going to be doing post-game analysis this year. I think Samson and pull up Trey, they announced that they weren't gonna be doing that. So I was like, okay, like we are gonna be doing that. We're gonna be doing post game, and we're gonna try to load up clips, and we're gonna try to dissect some film, talk about some plays. We're gonna try to make this season very educational because as much as the Toronto Raptors are gonna be learning, hopefully we can learn as a community as well. So that will be very cool. Overall, I'm not bummed. Would I have liked to see a win in the preseason when it didn't count for anything and Scottie launched for 30 and the Raptors won comfortably and Jonathan Mobo got like 4 or 5 dunks? Sure. But you're not going to win them all. And honestly, let this game be a painful reminder of like what it means to tank. Silver lining, I think the Raptors got a nice little blueprint on how to tank because if you want to tank, please play Ochai Abaji, Jamal Shead, and Davion Mitchell more together and call it development. And please put Jonathan Mobo and Jakob Pertl in that lineup too. Because holy shit, like you can be as good as you want and sound as you want defensively, but Lord help me, if you cannot make a shot, you cannot play basketball in the NBA. Like we talk about it all the time with lead initiators, with point guards, guys like Ben Simmons, guys like non-shooters specifically. If you can't shoot the basketball, you can't play in the NBA. It's just that simple. If you can't make an open shot, like we see guys like Matisse Thybulle, who can easily shoot better than a lot of guys in the Raptors, and is way better defender than a lot of guys in the Raptors. He's not in the lineup. You want to take a look. Do me a favor when you have some time and go look at the Portland Trailblazers roster. Just go look at it. Like really look at it. And that's a really bad team. Please look at a player like Tumani Kamara. Please look at players like Shaden Sharp, who of course, Shaden Sharp is injured right now. But please look at the talent on that team. It's insane. Right? It's not going to be a good team. Andrew saying, I love Kamara. Me too. Me too. Please look at the accumulation of talent and please also understand the Raptors do not have it right now. They're trying their best. What I think is encouraging is you're going to find out really quickly if Ochai Abaji and Davion Mitchell are going to be sticking around. And my money says neither of those guys are going to be on this team at the trade deadline. Like I think you trade them for a second round pick and give some team cap relief, and then you buy out the player that you take. The Raptors can take back more salary than they can put out. They are comfortably under the luxury tax. They're comfortably under, that line. They have not used their mid-level exception. They have future picks potentially to work things out. They're going to have to be great talent evaluators, and they are going to have to really, really prioritize talent, which is luckily what they did with the OG Anunoby trade. It's not so much what they did with the Pascal Siakam trade. I do think when he plays, Jacoby Walter is going to surprise some people. I do think by the end of the season, you're going to see some pop from guys like DJ Carton or Jamal Shead or Jonathan Mobo, where things start to slow down for them a little bit. But my blueprint for dealing with most young players and evaluating young players is always try to hone in on the good parts because there's going to be a lot of bad parts. Just try to hone in on the good parts. Try to see if it's transferable, replicable. Try to see like how Jonathan Mobo is reading the floor. Try to see what gaps open based on his actions and where his teammates could have been or should have been when he drove the basketball, right? Because right now he has no scoring gravity at all. And I think that's very uncomfortable for him. I think it's really uncomfortable for him because he's probably used to being a bit of a heart attack in college, right? Because he was playing in a pretty weak conference. And when Jonathan Mobo went up, and pump fake and tried to drive to the rim, usually he was drawing in a second or third defender, whereas now he's not. And it's confusing, right? It's really confusing and it's going to be a bit of an adjustment. The same thing with Grady Dick, right? Grady Dick's been the best player on his team for a very long time. And suddenly, according to Retro Jasper, and probably according to me as well, he's not a top 250 player in the NBA right now. He's very fringy, though. I could see him, being a useful, ninth guy on the bench for, the Denver Nuggets or something like that, or maybe a 10th guy for the Denver Nuggets. I think that's a good litmus test. Let's just go through this and figure out which of these players would play rotation minutes on the team that I believe what would okay, let's call it the OKC rating. I just want to see this and just kind of do a quick litmus test on this. What would this player be for OKC? Scottie Barnes. He would be the second option for OKC behind SGA. Jakob Pertl. I think he would be either starting center or backup center for them. Probably backup center because I think Isaiah Hartenstein's a little bit better. Davion Mitchell, he would be cut. Ochai Abaji, cut. Grady Dick, G League. Chris Boucher, cut. Fernando, cut. Battle, cut. Mobo, G League, two-way contract. Carlson, cut. Shamshay, two-way contract, G League. Ramsey, cut. Roden, cut. Shed probably cut because they really prioritize bigger guards. And DJ Carton, cut. So, yeah, that's just the problem. And, when you look at the players on their team that aren't playing right now, guys like Usman Jang or whatever, Usman Jang probably starts for you tonight in place of Ochai Abaji. So look, on the upside, the Toronto Raptors have 5 picks in the next 2 drafts. They have a lot of young players who have a bit of potential. Downside, you're gonna have to be patient because those 2 drafts are not happening tomorrow. They're happening a year from now. They're happening 9 months from now. August. Yeah, 9 months from now. So 9 months from today, you might be adding 2 really good young players to this team. At which point, you will absolutely get rid of a couple of the crappy players on this team. And I don't know. I just don't think that they're that far away. I'm just going to talk myself into that reality so I can sleep at night. I don't think they're that far away. I think it's going to take a little bit of time. I think it's going to probably take a couple of roster moves. I really think that the flexibility that guys like Bruce Brown, Chris Boucher, Davion Mitchell, these expiring contracts, I do think that they can yield you something of value. And right now, looking at the lack of talent on this team, how much would a shot maker, even a slightly overpaid one like Brandon Ingram, mean to you right now? How much would an elite 3-and-D role player who can really put up buckets like a Cam Johnson mean to you right now? Because I'll tell you right now, if you start ahead of schedule, those 2 players are totally within your grasp. Like you could maybe make a competent move to get either one of those guys, and we'll see. Andrew saying trade Bruce back to Denver for Brown. That doesn't exactly work out cap-wise because the Denver Nuggets are massively over the luxury tax, and Bruce Brown makes, I think, 5 times to 6 times more than Christian Brown. That won't always be the case, but it is the case for now. Greg saying, please like the stream. Absolutely. Can we get a Kongwu and Avdia? Okongwu, probably not. The Atlanta Hawks have 0 incentive to tank. They do not control their pick this year. So, and I assume Onyeka Okongwu will be high on Quinn Snyder's list of players to get the most out of this year. Denny Avdia, I don't think the Raptors would do it because of the political implications of him in a city like this. There's a really strong pro-Palestine contingent within the city, and probably, and I'm not sure, because I'm not very political or politically inclined. I'm assuming it's a lot of liberals that are very pro-Palestine, and he's Israeli, and he's a proud Israeli, and he's someone who has the Israel flag in his locker room and stuff. And I just feel like that's a really huge reason why there's a lot of teams, especially in certain cities, that probably would not touch him. There's probably a lot of players who have very, very strong emotions about that. I'm not getting into it personally. My political beliefs aside, obviously, I loved any of you. You make of that what you will, but I think he's a fantastic player, and I think he's probably the best player on the Wizards last year. I think he's the best player on the. I think he's the best player on the Portland Trailblazers right now. Rob, do you think it's always a good thing to push players towards their weaknesses instead of maximizing their strengths and building their confidence first? No, obviously not. Like, there's a mix of this. It's not so extreme, right? You need to do a little bit of both, right? You don't want to put Uri Shamshay as your starting center on day one and then break his confidence completely because obviously he's not an idiot. He's going to realize that his team is basically down 15 points every single time he touches the court. Like, you need players to understand, number one, where they are. You need them to buy into that. So when you are trying to, like, I consider it a little bit like trying to break someone's ego. Like, a lot of these players come in with a massive amount of ego, right? So you can't just deliberately put them in positions to fail, because then they'll always retain the element of their ego, which makes them feel like you're the reason they're failing, not their own lack of talent or lack of experience. So what you need to do is you need a little bit of both. You need to be able to put them in positions where they're comfortable with how they're being used, but then you have to get them to also meet you halfway. So, for instance, a Jonathan Mobo may want to handle the basketball a lot, but he may want to handle it, in the post. And you say, okay, well, if you're going to handle the basketball, we need you to do it more as a wing. And, if you're going to play wing for us, we're going to need you to hit a couple of threes. So it's a little bit of like that, right? It's a little bit of tit for tat. Like, with Scottie Barnes, like, we're going to let you initiate, 10, 15, 16 ball screens a game. We're going to let you run some pick and roll, but we also need you to be lower third in the defensive end, and we're gonna meet you halfway. So you're gonna be power forward defensively and a point guard on offense. There's the compromise, right? I think overall, like, you need to see players fail to understand that they can't do things, but also so they can't do things, but most importantly, so they know they can't do things. So very often when you're putting players in positions to fail, it's not necessarily things they don't even want to do. Sometimes it's things they think they can do. Like, for instance, Chris Boucher, the famous story in Tampa where he talked about how he thought that he was, just as good as, some of the better players in the league, which is a shock to no one who's ever watched Chris Boucher play basketball. He plays with a lot of confidence, sometimes too much confidence. And he played as a first option, and then he's often recounted that story as like, that experience taught me that that's what I'm not, that I'm not that guy. And and I don't know if that was all show, because sometimes he acts like he is a first option on the court, and I really, could do with a little less Chris Boucher personally on this team. I'm not a fan at all of his play style. It's just it's so, like, I love the energy. I love the fact that, the Raptors needed him tonight. It probably would have been a lot worse without him, but holy shit, man, he's a 31-year-old who really does play a lot like a second-year player. My point is, you needed him to see that. You needed him to see that, it's not just politics that he's not Pascal Siakam. He's not Pascal Siakam. He can't handle that role, right? It's the same thing with Precious Achiuwa. I'm sure every player, like half the players in the league, think they could do more. They just think it's like a conspiracy they can't. So sometimes putting them in positions where they can do exactly what they want to do, and then showing them that they effectively cannot do it, is actually very good. In terms of, putting players in positions to fail, I think it's somewhat misunderstood. I think you put players in positions to fail forward, right? So you want to put a Over Shamshe onto a Jonas Valanciunas. Like, you want him to feel what that feels like, but you don't want him to do that when you're up 5, right? You want him to do that when the game is over, so he doesn't have to deal with the burden of like, "Oh, I'm the reason we lost the game," that kind of stuff. You want to be able to give a kid a breather when things are going really poorly, and I think sometimes you have to have the pulse on that, right? So like, Darko Rakovic could write a book on development, so could Jama Malalela. Like, these guys really understand what they're doing when it comes to young players. They're gonna take slow steps. They're not gonna overload any of these guys. They're not going to, but at the same time, they're not going to box them into one role, which is a really big issue I have with Nick Nurse, which is there's zero creativity with the development process, and you need them to continue to fail, but you need them to fail by 10%. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, you don't want them to fail by 80%, because that is just, it's devastating. Like, failing by 80%, you don't, like, the only, like, I'm not a professional basketball player. Obviously, I don't pretend to be one on the internet. I have never touched the level of professional athleticism in my life. But the only thing I will say is that, for me, the closest thing I could think of is academics, because I was a very good student for a large part of my life, and I did test gifted when I was younger. And so I remember in grade 6 that things were too easy for me. Like, everything was too easy for me, and I was super bored with school. And I remember I had a teacher who took a very special interest in me and really helped me understand, my potential and how my brain was working and all that stuff. And so she would give me tasks that were previously for, kids in grade 9, grade 10, etc. And that would help me understand, like, where my gaps are. But she wasn't going to give me a grade 12 test and let me fail, but she also didn't want me to get super bored. So there was a constant thing of like, do your work, and then we'll go through the grade 10 curriculum and we'll learn a little bit of calculus. You know what I mean? But not like university level calculus where my brain breaks and I lose my confidence. So again, you want to just the thing with development, actually, the one thing I could probably point to is I used to teach tennis. So that was one thing where, I was working with kids, who are some were very, very good in New Jersey and sometimes in New York State. And what we would do is we would try to pair kids, especially like good young kids, with partners who were like 10% better than them. We wanted them to lose, but we didn't want them to lose badly. Like we wanted them to be competitive. We didn't want to match them up with a state pro and then have them completely crumpled, right? So I think that that's an important thing with development. Huh. Would you be willing to quickly share what side you're on of the Israeli Palestine conflict, or have you not chosen a side? This is a basketball channel. We don't talk politics here. Um, Yeah, I don't have any. I'm not Israeli. I'm not Palestinian. I'm not Muslim. I'm not Jewish. So, to me, it is a lot of devastation on both sides. I have talked to friends who were Palestinian, and I talked to a dear friend of mine who is Israeli. I've tried to understand the situation from both sides. I cannot tell you, you know, and I cannot say like, okay, well, I'm definitively for this. It seems like both sides are doing a lot of crazy stuff, and that's where I stand on it. My heart goes out to every child who's been ruined in this war, and I feel the same way about Russia, Ukraine. You know, you can have an idea of who's instigating what, you can have an idea of who has the moral high ground, but my experiences with what happened with Serbia, Yugoslavia, in the 90s, the war, there's no clean hands here, right? So, Cade Cunningham going off right now, you might be wrong about him. Your dad saying, "Fair enough, considering the debate you had a while ago against the fan on the stream where you discussed fans being racist to Boucher. I thought you discussed politics once in a while." That's fair. I don't think racism is politics. I think racism is humanity. So, yes, if a person is being racist towards Chris Boucher or Pascal Siakam, I don't think that's like saying, I don't like Justin Trudeau because of his politics. I do think politics and race are different, personally. I do. Yeah. Let's see what Cade Cunningham is doing that you guys are saying he's going off. Hang on. He's got 18 points on 7 for 11 shooting on 1 for a, and he's plus 18. He's playing up against cool. And the Pistons are blowing out the Phoenix Suns. Nice. Okay. Cool. That's what's happening right now. You think Cade's the truth? I mean, I will say this, regardless of how much more I prefer Scotty than Cade, I've always felt Cade had the smoother game overall. I think his game is just more compact, a little bit more advanced. I just don't think he gets separation, and I don't think he's a good defender. And that's all that matters to me. In the end, I've watched players like Kawhi Leonard look hella, hella bad. Pascal Siakam look hella, hella bad. To me, it's like about separation, right? Tracy McGrady looked really bad. I'm gonna tell you right now, 1999, I was watching a Raptors game, and Jack Armstrong was literally rambling for half an hour about how Tracy McGrady can't make a pull-up jumper, an open pull-up jumper. Okay. So it's like Andrew said Cade almost has as many points as Boucher had. You'll get there one day, pal. I don't know if that's directed at me getting there one day on Cade. I'm not super high on guys that have negative analytics for 3 straight years, but I will say this. Cade actually did play a hell of a lot better last year towards the end of the season. So did Jalen Green. Could both those guys be turning a corner? Sure. I mean, I don't know. Cade is good, but his ceiling is not a megastar. Sure. I mean, whereas previously I thought he would just be a very over leveraged, highly inefficient player like a Jerry Stackhouse at maximum. I now see him as a, I don't know, like a less athletic, better passing version of Jerry Stackhouse. Like I really don't know. I don't see him as a star. I don't think he'll ever touch the levels of a DeMar DeRozan, but I do think DeMar DeRozan would be like the absolute apex of what he could be. And I think Scottie Barnes is just that much better. Paradise Lost saying Jones Suggs played good too last season. Now that's one player that I've absolutely flipped my opinion on, and that is hopefully proof that I can change my mind. Jones Suggs and Brandon Miller are two players that I didn't start out very high on, but ended up, pretty high on now, right? Like I think Jones Suggs last year defensively, as annoying as he is, really, really, really good. Like, man, I would love to have Jalen Suggs on this team next to Scottie Barnes right now. In fact, last year when we were doing a trade show, I think it was 2 years ago, when we were doing a trade show, if y'all remember in Suggs' second year where he was struggling super hard and he was having injuries, that's when I started to turn myself around on Jalen Suggs. And I very much pitched a trade package centered for Fred Van Vliet for Jalen Suggs. So, yeah, Cade Cunningham, analytical disgrace. Oh Lord. Yeah, I just don't think that he finishes well enough, and I don't think he gets enough like separation on some of his drives. Like I think everything he does is super hard, right? So if you're gonna tell me that a preseason game against the Suns erases 3 years of data, I would say no. But if you're gonna tell me he's gonna be better this year, yeah, I have no doubt. I have no doubt he's gonna be better. And he was much better to end the season last year than he was to start the season, but he was also the star player who had 29 straight losses. Never forget that. If Scottie Barnes had 29 straight losses as a franchise player this year, like if he leads a team to 0-29 for a 29 game stretch, you will see pitchforks at the at the TSN front office. I guarantee it. Like the TSN, like entire coverage is just going to be how bad is Scottie Barnes? He's overrated. Blah 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 blah. Like, come on, man. The Suns might be cooked. Holy fuck my life, man. Guys, Kevin Durant does not fucking care about preseason. These guys are fucking doing cardio. The Pistons are playing for their lives. Okay. There's a complete gap in the separation in terms of how urgently these two teams are taking this. I'm not even watching the game, and I'm telling you right now, Tobias Harris is 8 for 11. Like these guys are trying to get one win before they go for another 60 loss season. Like I don't think the Pistons are going to break 25 wins this year. If they break 25 wins, it's a huge, huge step up. Devin Booker isn't even playing, bro. Right. Like he's their best player. Like I'm supposed to care the Bradley Beal. Like these guys are doing friggin' cardio out there. And trust me, like nobody wants to lose to the Pistons. Like I wouldn't be too surprised if the Pistons pull this out, but yeah. What's your hot take of the season that Scottie Barnes finishes top 10 in MVP voting? I think that's pretty hard. I think that's pretty hot. If Scottie or RJ goes down, rap season is done instantly. I don't think so. I think it's just a critical mass thing. You need just a sufficient amount of defense, a sufficient amount of playmaking, a sufficient amount of shooting to just make an offense work. You need a sufficient amount of screen setting, separation, creation, all these things, all these variables. Like you just lose so much of it when you lose four of your best playmakers. Like Kelly plus Bruce plus RJ plus Immanuel Quickley, like that's a crazy amount of talent to lose. Like those are all like legit guys. I think RJ is a top 120 guy in the league. I think Immanuel Quickley is a top 120 guy in the league. I think Kelly's like a top 150 guy in the league. I think Bruce is like a top 150, 160 guy in the league. Like these are decent players. Like they're what help you float. You know what I mean? So even if you had Bruce Brown and Kelly Olynyk tonight, you win this game clearly. If there's anything you can take away from this live, I hope it's this. There's a massive difference between 1,000, 500, and 250 when it comes to the NBA. And there's a really big gap between 1 and 17, right? The gap between 1 and 17 might be bigger than the gap between 150 and 350. Doesn't matter. You can't lose to the Pistons, expect to win a chip. Just sell the team at that point. Yeah, I'll be sure to let the Phoenix Suns owner Matt Ishbia know that he should sell the team because his team lost to the Detroit Pistons in preseason. Bro, some of y'all like really Y'all really just like drama? Like, this is crazy to me. Anyways, I want to thank y'all for the super chats. I appreciate it. Noble Venom and Recruiter Dude, two of our regulars. Thank you so much. And thank you as well. Jonathan Savoy. Thanks for spreading the positive vision for this team. I'm with you. Oh, that's so nice. I was just thanking people for super chats and we got another super chat. Thank you so much. I thank you. And honestly, look, I fully understand how ugly this looked tonight. I totally get it. I've talked to a lot of people around the league over the last, 7, 8 years, 12 years, even going back to 2006. I've always been curious to understand how teams become good, how teams, develop. This is like it is a fascination of mine. If you've ever wondered why I interview so many trainers, it's this reason. I just want to understand the process of development, getting better, and I think that it's very universally applicable. And, I just think sometimes you have to take a certain step back in order to be good. The Raptors lost tonight by 19 to the Washington Wizards. Let me make a bold prediction. They're not going to lose by 19 to the Boston Celtics. All right. Cass with a $2 super chat. Appreciate it. Greg with a $5 super chat. Appreciate it as always, guys. Very generous. Very nice of you. I hope you guys have a great long weekend, Thanksgiving weekend. I'm gonna see if we can load up some film and maybe talk about it on Sunday afternoon. I'm still on the fence about whether I want to go to that Thanksgiving dinner or whether I want to watch the Raptors versus the Boston Celtics in real time or watch it in delay. Tetrahedron saying, you said Kate's maximum upside is DeMar. What is Scottie's? A better passing, slightly shorter version of Giannis Antetokounmpo. I mean, I don't know, Scottie Pippen, Magic Johnson mix, whatever. Let me put it this way. Honestly, despite what it looked like tonight with the turnovers and whatnot, like I've seen KD have nasty turnovers too. I think everyone's a little bit on edge because there's a lot of fear about this team. Like, oh my God, are they going to be like 70 loss bad? Are they going to be horrible? Are they going to tank? Is Scottie really good? I was just explaining to my girlfriend why a lot of fans can't adjust their minds towards rooting for Scottie, and it's because he wasn't really a part of that championship team. And so a lot of people really have checked out. And I understand that and I appreciate that. And I understand where they're coming from. That, Fred VanVleet and Pascal Siakam were a part of something. And Scottie Barnes was in high school when the Raptors won a championship in 2018, 2019. Scottie was in high school. Scottie was at Montverde in 2019, right? In 2020, he was at Florida State. And in 2021, he was in the NBA. So I understand that. Like, I fully understand that, it's a new crew. There's none of these guys won a championship with your team. Chris Boucher barely played for that team. So, I don't really count that. And it's a new page. And, there's a lot of doom and gloom. And when there is anxiety, there is often overreactivity. I find that is almost always the case. You know what I mean? It's like being, if if you're walking down a dark alley and I tell you it's a dangerous neighborhood and I tell you there's a murderer loose and someone drops a coin, you're gonna freak, right? That's the way I look at this situation, right? There's a lot of doom and gloom prognosticators saying the Raptors going to be really terrible. Scottie's not a real star. RJ's trash. He's a toxic contract. Immanuel Quickley is really a bench player that you massively overpaid. Jakob Pertl is a poison pill contract. Bruce Brown is washed. Grady Dick is a bust. Jacoby's nothing. Uri Shamshay is 15 years away from being 15 years away. Jonathan Mobo is a non-NBA player who can't really score. Jamal Shed is a little like a Oompa Loompa. You know what I mean? Davion Mitchell and Ochai Baji can't play basketball. Garrett Temple is 500 years old. Like, shall I continue? Kelly Olynyk is just, like a Canadian guy. He's just here. Like, I mean, come on. There's a lot of doom and gloom around this team. And when such a thing happens and you go out and lose to the Washington Wizards, I mean, do you remember my reaction losing to the Pistons last year when we broke their streak? My reaction was, I told you that would happen. Like, I literally predicted it. I was predicting it for weeks that streak is going to end against the Raptors. I don't care about these things. The longer term vision is the longer term vision. I'll tell you this. I was very against the Jakob Pertl trade. Do y'all remember that? I was very against holding on to Pascal Siakam the whole way through. I was like pissed off the whole time they did it. I was so pissed off they traded away future round. Is because I don't look 2 feet ahead. I've never worked that way. Even when I was 12 years old, I didn't think that way. I've never thought that way. I try to have a longer term vision for things. And hopefully, if you're part of this community, I'm trying to share that longer term vision with you. It's not a hopes and dreams speech. It's not bullshit. I'm just telling you that there's potential on this team. It's a really good team. In fact, I will always remember this story. And I've told this story many times, you know, where the Toronto Raptors struck out on Steve Nash. And I was playing a basketball game at U of T, and this guy's phone started going off. Give me a W if you remember the story. This guy's phone starts going off, and he's like, "The Raptors just got some random point guard from Houston." And my ear perked up, and I was like, "Please, God, tell me it's Kyle Lowry." I was a huge Kyle Lowry fan. And I was so against the Steve Nash pursuit. Like, I wanted to shoot myself. The idea of bringing Steve Nash here for the fucking MLSE cash grab. Like, I hated the idea of it. And when I found out we got Kyle Lowry, I was like, "What did we give up? We give up DeMar DeRozan? Like, what the fuck did we give up?" And they're like, "Oh, first round pick." I was ecstatic. I think I might have thrown a party. I literally went drinking right after that. Day drinking. That's how happy I was with Kyle Lowry. That's my point. Like I felt like we got a franchise point guard, and everyone is like, "That's some random guy. It's not Steve Nash." It's like, you know what I mean? Like you got to think a little longer term when it comes to young players. And Kyle wasn't even that young. He was like 25 years old, coming to the Raptors 26. He burnt out 2 coaches, 2 situations. He was on his 3rd team. It's a lot like Davion Mitchell, except Kyle Lowry is really good at basketball. I don't know. So I'm just trying to say, keep that longer term vision of this team. There's a lot of good things happening. It's not going to materialize overnight, but Grady Dick can't shoot. Come on, Thierry. That's crazy. He's not going to be a good 3-point shooter. He's going to be a fine 3-point shooter. The spacing is, however, going to be very different when you have RJ and Immanuel Quickley versus, Jamal Shead and Davion Mitchell. It's going to be different. Andrew says, I agree, but what we got for what we had wasn't bad. Right. That's a new metric for incredible for the community. It's a day drink and Rob good. That's true. I just had non-alcoholic beer for the first time tonight. Not terrible. Would not repeat. Okay. All right, guys. Wow. Have we hit this level of low? I'm all for bringing Aaron Baines back on a 10-day. Why not get Matt Bonner while we're at it? Can we do that? Can we get a Jerome Moiso? Can we name any more random bigs? I'm not sure at this point if Jerome Moiso is a worse player than Bruno Fernando, but I'm positive that Bruno Fernando is not a better player than Bruno Caboclo. Make that happen, Toronto. Get Bruno Caboclo back on this team so we can finish that process that we started all that time ago. And that's spooky for Halloween. I'm not really enough of a fanatic of beer for me to try and seek non-alcoholic variations of a drink that I don't even care that much for. I mean, I like beer. I'll take beer when it is. But oftentimes I wonder if if my even tolerance for beer comes down to my fandom for Stone Cold Steve Austin. I wonder if that is the case. Is that possible? I miss Linas Kleza too. Speaking of Lithuanians, did you notice that during the broadcast they mentioned a stat? They talked about 6 players who started all 82 games last year, and they said Jonas Valanciunas and Domantas Sabonis were 2 of those players. That's a W for Lithuania if I ever heard one. All right. Okay. Overall takeaways for this game: it was ugly. Jack Armstrong had a brilliant quote. I don't usually say Jack had anything brilliant to say, but he had something brilliant to say today. He said, "I'll remember this game for as long as it takes for me to walk to my car." I think that's a great quote. And I think that's exactly the quote that you should use. Do not let this ruin your night. Do not let this ruin your fandom. Do not anything. It's not worth it. It's fine. This is not the Toronto Raptors. This was an imposter team. And it's a nice little wake up call. And, Scotty smiling ear to ear with Jama Layla towards the end. That should tell you everything you need to know. Let's go to the post game. Hang on. I'm just going to pull it up and hopefully we can hear what the Raptors had to say. If it is up, we will get it. If it is not, we will not. But let's hope that it is up. One sec. Toronto Raptors post game. Let's see here. Oh, a Raptors Digest video about how Chris Boucher will start or might start. I can promise you, Chris Boucher will not start. Like, that is never going to happen on this team. But good game for Chris Boucher. This is. Oh, hang on. Let me just run a filter and see. Maybe it's up on some other channel. Give me one sec here. Relevance upload date. We got highlights. No post game. What? No post game after this? I want to hear what Scottie Barnes had to say. This is why I often did post games a little bit later last year. Because while I appreciate the immediacy of doing a post game within 10 minutes of the game, I really like the idea of doing a post game when the post game interviews were there. So maybe for the next game, we'll do the post game an hour after the game, and that'll also give me some time to get get back from the dinner. Alrighty, y'all. I can't believe you actually collabed with Raptors Digest. Hey man, it was an opportunity. We took it. We got to speak some facts on Gary Trent Jr. We got to speak to, I'm pretty sure that netted us about 55 to 80 subscribers. So that was a pretty good collaboration. Shout outs to Ben Rogers. You know what? Every channel does their own thing. I remember, earlier on in my YouTube journey, when I was a really small content creator, I used to call out a lot of content creators. I used to call, like Warwick Report or whatever. I used to call them crap. I used to make fun of Lockdown Raptors. I don't think I've ever really said anything too derogatory about Raptors Digest, but certainly I have said some derogatory things about NBHF. I'm doing my very, very best. Honestly, I'm not even doing my best. I just don't want to. I don't want to go there this year. I really don't. I really don't. But I mean, if I have to react to something they're saying, then I totally will without all the ad hominem attacks. Yeah, Chris Boucher is not going to start. He just doesn't fit into what Darko Rakovic wants to do. I promise you, and that's not going to change. That's not going to change. He can say whatever the fuck he wants. Darko can say, "Oh, we love Chris. We really value Chris. Chris is great." Blah blah blah. I don't give a shit. Like, I know how Darko Rakovic thinks to some extent. I really do. Like, I understand his basketball philosophy. Chris Boucher ain't it. He ain't it. Absolutely not. But Jonathan Mobo, he is it. He is it. If you tell me by the end of the year Jonathan Mobo is your fifth starter, that I would believe. That I could believe. If Grady struggles, Jonathan will get a look at it. Digest is clickbait nonsense. Without getting too, detail oriented on this, I do think that there is a certain type of content that is very grabby and can sometimes be a little too sensationalist for me. Now, I understand that sometimes I've been accused of doing the same thing, overreacting to something or whatever. And maybe that's just because I'm bipolar about certain things. I don't know. But if I were to release a video saying massive update on the Toronto Raptors future, and the update is DJ Carton got a two-way contract, I think y'all would check out real quick, right? So I think it's important to kind of keep a realistic long-term view. And by the way, this is what this channel has been devoted to. What I said earlier about the Raptors having that vision for the long term, that's kind of what this channel has been about too, right? Like, my long-term vision is trying to be the best podcaster I can be, trying to grow as a human being. I mean, I got to run a film festival. It's coming up in February 26th to March 2nd. I got to grow as a person in order to lead that team, right? I'm going to get back to filmmaking at some point. I haven't been on a film set as a filmmaker in a pretty long time. I'm also an editor. So all of these skills that are continuing to build up, I build up through this channel. I'm trying to become a better person. You know what I mean? Like, I'm trying to become a lot less condescending, a lot more understanding. I'm trying to become a better listener, and I'm constantly trying to gauge myself. That's my goal with this channel. My goal is not to grab the most views per video. If you've noticed, haven't really been making a ton of videos lately. That's because lives are so much more pressure, like way more pressure, to get this shit right, to do it in a coherent way. You know, I think the live that we did for the last post game, super disorganized. I could not get my thoughts together, and I was like sinking in quicksand. I knew it was going terribly, and I did not know how to control it at all. I did not know. I didn't know how to do it, and that was a good learning experience. You know what I mean? Center yourself before the live. There's a lot of lives last year that went completely off the rails, and especially the year before that. Holy shit, the year before that, we were going off the rails. So every single year we have fewer and fewer incidents. And I'll tell you, you know, this something that just really was a bit of a growth moment, and I'll share it with you because I suspect that of the 215 of you that are in here right now, at least half of you are regulars who've been here for at least a couple of years. And you know, every single time I would remember, you know, a couple of years ago when Scottie Barnes was struggling like really hard, and I kept saying like, "Yo, be patient. It's just a tough stretch, et cetera, et cetera. He's going to be fine." I remember a lot of people, you know, and then sometimes I'll go a little bit further and I would even say, like, yo, he's going to be a superstar. He's going to be an all star. Like, y'all are fucking tripping. Like, you know, people were saying, like, trade him for a future first round pick, or we should have fucking traded him for KD when we could have, or Jalen Suggs is going to be better. Cade's better. Evan Mobley's better. Franz is better. Kaminga's better. Like, oh my God, go back and revisit the takes from year two from your favorite podcasters. Please do it. But do me a fucking favor and look at the first 2 years of coverage for Scottie Barnes, and you'll see a lot of fucking crazy takes. And I remember, you know, somebody saying to me, like, get off his meat, you know, just basically making a lot of comments that, and I'm not a kid, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not I'm not 17 or 18 years old. I'm not on Twitch. I'm not on TikTok. These terms, get off his meat. Like, I never said this to anybody when I was growing up. Like, I'm 36 years old. I've never said get off his dick, get off his meat. Like, and that's not because I did not grow up in, you know, the particular culture that would say that. That's not it. It just that's not the lingo because I'm not Gen Z, right? And the first time someone said that about Scotty, it was like really infuriating. It was like it made me really angry. And, you know, almost wanted to like, fuck, I blocked that person right away. I was like, what the fuck? Like, that's such a mean, disgusting thing to say because I take things very literally. And then the other day, I was on the panel and I was talking about Victor Wembanyama and how good I think he's going to be. And someone said the same thing. They were like, "Oh my God, get his meat out of your mouth," blah 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 blah, and just basically like going on and on and on and on and on about stuff like that. It's like, bro, like how hard you going to ride that? There's a lot of that. And I remember reading that comment and just sort of laughing. And I was like, wow, that's a lot of growth for 1 year. That's a lot of growth for 1 year. You know what I mean? Like to go from anger, block, scream to laughter is like 85 steps. You know what I mean? So that's what this podcast is for me. That's what it's always been for me. It's been an opportunity to connect, grow, build, teach. That's what it is. It's not about clickbait. It's not about, you know, super chats, although I very much appreciate it. It's not about money. It's not about generally it's not about those things. It is really about, you know, improving the experience as a fan, hopefully giving you guys a little bit of a deeper understanding of the game. And my only hope with Pensar basketball is that if you're a Pensar basketball person, if you listen to Pensar basketball usually, and you talk sports with your friends, that over some period of time, if you know, if we discuss enough things in this community, that you be seen as like the person in your friend group that really understands basketball. You know what I mean? Like that to me is cool. If we're going to spend so much of our lives, like, I mean, I estimate throughout my life, I will probably spend thousands upon thousands upon thousands upon tens of thousands, maybe 100,000 hours watching basketball, playing basketball. Basketball has been a huge part of my life. So to do something so much to not understand it is actually kind of, you know, sad to me. I had this entire thing on the panel. To those of you who don't know, I'm on the Players' Choice panel every week. And, you know, there's this entire thing about we ranked out every coach in the NBA. And, you know, to those who did not watch, Darko Rajakovic ended up ranking, I think, 23rd out of 30 coaches. Anyways, the day before, I went on this entire rant about, you know, Ron was saying something along the lines of like, I don't have, you know, 6 hours to dissect. Like I can figure out who the best coaches are within like 10 minutes. And I was just like, that's so ignorant. Like it's so ignorant to think that you can do that because there's we even know what a good coach is like in the NBA. Like you can tell that because you've never played in the NBA. Like how could you possibly know? You know, you haven't even researched these guys. And so I quickly quizzed them and I was like, where did Will Hardy coach before he coached, you know, for the Jazz? And nobody knew. And I was like, where did, you know, Darko Rajakovic coach before he got to the Raptors? And nobody knew. And I was like, that's why. And I got into this huge thing on Thursday about them underrating Jordy Fernandez because he had no NBA experience. Things like that. You know, it's like Like I really have a deep passion for this game. I love this game. I love this team. And honestly, for a while there, this team was really hard to watch. So enjoy the lumps, enjoy the growth, and I'll see y'all next live. And it's gonna be okay. This game does not define the season, doesn't count for jack shit. And if the Raptors really are bad enough to lose to the Wizards by 20, 19 points, then welcome to Canada, Cooper Flag. Maine is not a far ride away. But if they're as good as I think they're going to be, you really don't have anything to worry about. Anyways, talk to y'all later. Peace. Have a good one. And once again, thank you so much for the numerous super chats and for your relentless support. And I would deeply appreciate if you give this video a like on your way out. Peace.